our 5th grade. And to answer questions some of you may have, yeah, everybody is judged together. So we don't have a separate contest for grade levels or for girls or boys. This is a world without boundaries. And if they move on, they're going to be moving on with 12th graders. Last year, some of our students were competing against a girl who had already committed to University of Georgia. Jimmy.
Imagine a world without boundaries. I mean, just take a second and think about it. No boundaries could be a good thing. If we had no land boundaries, people would be free to move all around the world without hesitation. They would be free to explore. However, what if there were no boundaries or no rules on how we should live? That could be dangerous. This could possibly cause wars. People may not feel as safe as they do with boundaries. The world would definitely be a different place than it is today. A world with boundaries would be a world without rules. Anything with rules would change. The first thing I think about is sports. Sports without rules, how would that work? Thinking about the question reminds me of a particular game that was played last spring. In Little League Baseball, there's a rule where if you can't catch 3 innings or more, you cannot pitch. It was the 4th inning, and their ace pitcher was catching. They needed someone to come in as a relief pitcher. So the coaches moved the catcher to the pitcher. But this was against the rules. Their ace pitcher had already caught for 4 innings. We're not really sure if the coaches did this on purpose, but it was breaking the rules. It was cheating. No one realized the mistake until the end of the game. The team who broke the rules would have won the game, and this would have been unfair. They ended up playing the game, and they ended up winning the game anyway. But at least the end of the game was replayed in a fair way. During the 2017 World Series, the Astros cheated in the big game. They had hidden cameras in the outfield to steal signs. They were playing the Los Angeles Dodgers. They won the 2017 World Series. In 2018, the Boston Red Sox played the Los Angeles Dodgers. This time, the Boston Red Sox stole signs and won in 2018. In 2019, the Astros played the Washington Nationals and stole signs again. But this time, they lost the World Series. Talk about karma. If the Major League Baseball hadn't found out about that the Astros and Red Sox were cheating just a month ago, both teams had gotten away with cheating and winning the national title. After they found out that they were cheating, Cody Bellinger said, "Everyone knows they stole a ring from us, but it's over." In the NFL, a kicker of all people, you wouldn't expect a kicker to cheat, kicked a field goal. It was blocked it back into his hands. He caught the ball and ran for the end zone. He made it into the score the final touchdown. However, later that day, he announced that he was high on banned substances. It's weird but true. He was breaking the rules. Another cheating example in the NFL during the Jets Miami game. A coach was on the sideline standing right next to the field. When the ball was kicked, the Miami player rushed down the field. He missed the tackle, but got right back up and tried to get back to the play. When he was running back, one of the opposing team's coaches tripped him. The coach cheated by tripping the player and ended up also hurting the player. Back to baseball. Barry Bonds is the all-time home run leader in front of Hank Aaron. Barry Bonds passed Hank Aaron with 762 home runs. Hank Aaron had 755 home runs in his career. On September 5th, 2003, Barry Bonds was accused of taking steroids, which are banned in the MLB. Barry Bonds' trainer misled him into using flaxseed oil and arthritis cream with steroids mixed in it. If the MLB hadn't found out that Barry Bonds was using banned substances, Barry Bonds would have been the home run leader in an unfair way. Here's another sport, golf. In the Hero World Challenge, Patrick Reed was hitting the ball. He hit it right into the sand. When Reed was in the sand, he touched the ball with his club, which is a rule infraction. Brooks Koepka was on Sirius XM, Someone asked him, was he cheating? Kepler replied, yeah, I think, yeah. I mean, I don't know what he was doing, building sandcastles in the sand, but you know where your club is. I mean, I took 3 months off, and I can promise you, if I touch sand. His consequence was a 2-stroke penalty, which cost him the match. He cheated. And to think, the examples that I talked about are in a world with boundaries and rules. If we didn't have any boundaries, I'm afraid that it would be one crazy world. Boundaries are important. They provide safety and fairness, but with boundaries, having freedoms and rights are very important too. Quote, it takes many good deeds to build a reputation, and only one to lose it.
Thank you, Jimmy. And for those parents and family members that just joined us, some of you, I think most of you remember, but we don't applaud after the speeches. And it seems odd, but we do that at the end, so thank you. Camila. Just get your mic where you want it. Make sure before you.
Imagine a world without boundaries. Hola, ¿cómo estás? If you don't know what that means in English, it is hello, how are you? Anyway, welcome ladies and gentlemen. Today I'll be giving a speech and this is its theme. Imagine a world without boundaries. If we didn't have boundaries at all, then the world would be scary. If we didn't have rules, then people wouldn't know how to act around other people. There wouldn't be home security and fences, so your home would just be wide open. When our school was renovated, we moved to another building. That building had no fence around the playground. It was just a wide open field. So if we the kids wanted to go all the way to the road, we could. We could wander off unseen because we didn't have a boundary separating the playground and the road. There are invisible boundaries, but that doesn't come right away into all people's minds. We had boundaries where our teachers told us we could and could not go up to a particular bush or shrub, but not beyond. When I was younger, and I'm embarrassed to say now that I was a bully. I made little kids cry, which was not right. Then I talked with my teacher, and she said we should always be we should always be nice because you don't know what is going on in your life. So I took that information and started being nice to the kids I bullied. I know how it feels to be bullied because I've been bullied a lot myself. I learned to not judge people if they're wearing saggy pants or ripped up t-shirt or big shoes or they're just a different color than me. Just judge them how big their heart is. Anne Frank was a Jewish girl caught up in the Holocaust. She was hiding in an attic apartment above Otto Frank's business. She always had a positive attitude, even though there were boundaries for her and for other Jews at that time. Boundaries like the fact that Jewish kids couldn't go to school. But she always read and she always had a great attitude. Without rules, many kids would be on social media all the time. Imagine that. Also, many kids would be wasting their money on junk food and they would be eating food that isn't healthy for their bodies. Who would want that for their children? My friends and I walk on Fridays after school to an ice cream place, and they get twice the scoops I normally get. It's ridiculous, I know. But there should be boundaries that people should only get one scoop. However, I don't want there to be boundaries separating the families. Please close your eyes and imagine that you're an immigrant in Mexico, and your family is in California in the U.S. And there is a boundary separating the two countries. It would be a chaotic situation. I have made my own boundaries, my personal boundaries. Two of my personal boundaries are not to text past 8 p.m. and to not text before 9 a.m. I agree with Tara Brach, an American psychologist, who said the boundary to what we can accept is the boundary to our freedom. Thank you so much for spending your time and listening to my speech.
Thank you, Camila. Sophia.
Imagine a world without boundaries. A world where we would all have a positive outlook on our futures. A world without boundaries would build self-confidence and break down the walls holding us back from what we believe in. Keep in mind that there are some boundaries that help us in life, such as personal boundaries keeping us from being off task, or traffic lights and stop signs keeping us aware of when to go or stop. These boundaries definitely help us in life. On the other hand, there are some boundaries that negatively affect what we do and say. For example, in some parts of the world, young women are not able to experience what it's like to have a job or even be able to treat themselves with respect due to having their education held back from them. In my opinion, girls should be able to live a life where they have the ability to pursue their dreams and not be told what they can and can't do. All of this would change if we lived in a world without boundaries. Girls and boys would be able to join hands and stand united together, not apart. I myself have set many boundaries out of the blue before. These boundaries have gotten me pretty far in my sports, school, and even at home. But if boundaries were non-existent, then I would have accomplished half of what I have throughout my life so far. Picture this. You're in the middle of your first marathon and fear of not finishing holds you back from moving forward. Without your own boundary of fear, you can finish your race and move forward. Holding yourself back is setting an unnecessary boundary that you have to think about again and again. A world without boundaries would lead to a lot of injuries and break down our self-confidence. If there were no rules, many accidents would occur, and many more people, even law-abiding people, would now feel more afraid to break the law. Many people keep doing the wrong thing over and over again because they have nothing to stop them. I want everyone to imagine this world without boundaries. Imagine how much impact would occur if there were a world without any boundaries. People bouncing all over the place, hurting each other, and creating a whole lot of violence. But also, imagine the good that would happen throughout this process. A world without boundaries makes me think of a world where humanism is the only religion. All of the possibilities we could then possess. No barriers holding us from traveling one side of the world to another. If you're running your first marathon, limiting yourself with a boundary will do you no good, but it will stop you from finishing your race. If we all lived in a world where boundaries were non-existent, the good and the bad in life would change our mindsets and actions. About 50% of the people in this room would have a changed mindset due to the choice between optimism and pessimism. Make your life a masterpiece. Imagine no limitations on what you can be, have, or do. Quote Brain Tracy. Again, imagine a world without boundaries. Think of how much chaos and negative rather than positive would be spoken. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. Lucas, thank you.
Imagine a world without boundaries. To me, a world without boundaries is a world without rules, and a world without rules is a disaster. Many more crimes will happen if our world has no rules, and many more people would get hurt. Rules are sometimes called laws. Laws are really there to protect people, not to put unnecessary limits on them. Those kind of boundaries are necessary. Society would not run smoothly without them. Boundaries are like when you say, that is a limit, I can't run that much, or that's too hard. Personal boundaries can be different from person to person because different people are comfortable with different amounts of personal space, for example, or limits of what they want other people to say or not to say to them, or when they want privacy and they will think or say out loud, you can't say that to me or leave me alone. Well, that's our business. If we just ignore personal boundaries, we would sometimes make others uncomfortable, or we ourselves would be uncomfortable. Boundaries can sometimes be used against you. Barriers are like boundaries. Think about it. The great American Jackie Robinson, he overcame the many barriers and boundaries that people put to him. One, for example, was his color, which was white. That should not have been a barrier or him as a great athlete and baseball player that he was, and it was not there. But in our American past, color was definitely a barrier, and sometimes innocence may still be a barrier today. Too many white people talked about Jackie and called him names, ugly and mean names. But even though he must have cared, he did not let them burn him. He did not let the narrow-minded comments or being spite when he played baseball or the shouting jeers in movie stands become a barrier for him. He did what he loved and he did it best. He was a rookie of the year when he left the Negro League and played with the Brooklyn Dodgers. He helped lead the Dodgers to a World Series. He won the MVP award. Jackie Robinson and his coach, Branch Rickey, did imagine a world without boundaries. Their imagination and courage helped our country move forward in so many important ways. Another important example of imagining a world without boundaries is like little 6-year-old Ruby Ridges broke the color barrier in school, in elementary school in New Orleans. The great Ruby Ridges helped other Black people to escape and overcome the limits and boundaries. At the age of 6, she was a brave leader who broke boundaries. Greta Thunberg was angry because nobody was doing anything about climate change. So she became an activist and started speaking out. She broke her personal boundaries and of being autistic and spoke out. The president mocked her, but it did nothing to her. She took and used that to be better. Rita was so great, she demolished the limits and boundaries and became Person of the Year in 2019. Quote, "You are never too small to make a difference." And this is a quote by Jackie Robinson. I'm not asking you to like me or dislike me. All I ask is to respect me as a human.
Thank you, Lucas. Kai.
Imagine a world without boundaries. Hola, bienvenidos. Because we have different languages and countries, I just spoke to you now in Spanish. I said, hello, welcome. Just imagine a world without boundaries. A world where everyone spoke the same language and you could all understand what I just said. Imagine a world where people could move freely from country to country where I could finally meet my family in Venezuela for the first time. Where we didn't need visas, passports, and money everywhere to be the same. Imagine a world where you could always believe in what you are doing, where you could conquer your fears. Imagine a world where dyslexia wouldn't make it so hard for me to write this speech. There have been certain points in our history where we didn't have boundaries. One example is our interesting history of immigration. For many years, America had an open door policy. We welcomed people from all different backgrounds. In the 1900s, thousands of immigrants were traveling to America each day. Many were welcomed by the Statue of Liberty, which said, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free." Between 1880 and 1924, over 2 million immigrants came to America from Europe. During that same time period, about 240,000 came from Asia and about 90,000 came from South America, and many immigrants came from Middle East and Africa. They were able to come to America because America had very few boundaries to immigration. As a result, they were able to find better lives for their families. At the same time, America was getting stronger because we were getting people with different beliefs, cultures, and ideas. Many of our inventions came from immigrants. That all sounds great, doesn't it? A world without boundaries really sounds like a perfect world. But let's stop and think a bit further about this so-called perfect world. While without boundaries, we could do anything we wanted, sounds pretty good. The reality is we need some boundaries and laws. We need boundaries to prevent chaos, to protect people from crimes and other terrible things. We need some boundaries to make it clear to everyone what is right behavior and what is wrong behavior. And we need some boundaries to keep our citizens safe and secure from each other. The real question is, what is the right balance between too many boundaries and too few boundaries? Finding the answer to this difficult question is going to take hard work, but it will be absolutely necessary. I will close by saying gracias, merci, mahalo, grazie, danke, and thank you.
Merci, Paul. Hanya.
Imagine a world without boundaries. A world without boundary. By boundary, I mean anything which restricts your freedom. A norm, a law, a condition, etc. Now close your eyes and imagine a world where there are no boundaries. What comes to your mind when you hear a world without boundaries? A world where we have freedom, or a world where there is a chaos? When I first heard a world without boundary, I thought of a world where there is a lot of crime, death, and unsafe societies. Today, in my speech, I will shed light on three things. Number one, why lots of people are against boundaries. Number two, what are the pros and cons of boundaries? And number three, why I think boundaries are dangerous. Why are some people against boundaries? I can give you two examples of why some people are against boundaries. First, wealthy people would not like to pay certain taxes to support the needs of the poor. They're willing to pay taxes. To support the needs of the poor, but no, for the public services they use. But they would not like to pay taxes for the general welfare. For instance, to support the poor, such wealthy people, this kind of tax seems a boundary which infringes on their freedom of spending their money on their own. Second, some people like overspeeding because it thrills them. To them, traffic rules may seem boundary, which must be overthrown. However, these boundaries are not only useful for their safety, but also for the lives of others. What are the pros and cons of boundaries? Some boundaries protect people's lives. Some help alleviate poverty in society. We learn to respect other people's boundaries, peace in society, fewer accidents on roads. Setting boundaries leads to better relationships. Setting boundaries leads to protection for your wealth and property. Cons. Poverty is a boundary that limits people's choices in life. It has severe health and wealth-related implications for an individual. It also has socioeconomic consequences for society. Immigration-related boundaries limit the chances of flight for refugees. Why do I think boundaries are good for us? I think boundaries are good for us because they keep us safe and secure. For example, in certain countries, people can't drive until they're 18. When a child is 18, she's old enough to be responsible enough they're 18 today. Norms may also be called boundaries, and some people rebel against norms. But norms connect people. For instance, we have norms to wear specific dresses on special places and occasions, such as games, church, temple, and mosque. Following the norms of those places creates connections and mutual respect. As an anonymous person wrote, lack of boundaries invites lack of respect. That's why I think boundaries are good. Now you know why there are boundaries in this world, and what it would be like if we didn't have boundaries. Next time, if we come across a boundary, we should keep in mind that it can be good for us. Doreen Ricci said, boundaries are a part of self-care. They are healthy, normal, and necessary. Nevertheless, some boundaries must not exist, such as poverty, which limits people's choices in life. Everyone deserves a choice in their life. Thank you.
Thank you, Hanya. Claire?
Imagine a world without boundaries. Think of this world without boundaries as someone who has a disability. For instance, Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking, one of the world's greatest physicists of the 20th century, had physical boundaries, diseases, and disabilities. Yet his mind and imagination and willpower refused to accept limitations, and he broke free from these boundaries. And even without boundaries, people might not be able to love each other. Love is a very important subject, but also delicate. I believe that if two people are connected at the heart, then it doesn't matter what you do or who you are or where you live. There are no boundaries or barriers if two people are destined to be together. Stephen truly agrees. There can be beneficial outcomes without boundaries or bad outcomes without boundaries. Imagine the chaos plus yelling and screaming that could exist without any boundaries at all. With no boundaries whatsoever, then people could break into houses every minute. Imagine a world without boundaries, or then no laws, no jails, this is also forever. A few weeks ago, I saw Little Woman with my mom, sister, and grandparents. Jo, the independent sister, feels that you can be free in life. Everybody had always told her, a woman needs a man in her life. Jo did not follow the rules of this lifestyle. She didn't care what people thought. She didn't need a man. Throughout her whole life story, Jo was a strong, brave woman. Also, Amy, the younger sister, was a little troublemaker. But she didn't follow the rules in a different way, unlike Jo. When Jo said you're not allowed to go ice skating with Lorraine, Amy got furious. So she followed them and went, even though it turned out to be really chaotic. Those two sisters didn't follow the rules in extremely different ways, good and bad. This tells me that having absolutely no boundaries in the world could either be good or bad. It depends on what people do with their free will when confronted with a world without boundaries. Stephen Hawking was a free man. He always used to base jump into a swimming. Base jumping is when a parachute is attached to a backpack on your back and you climb over a rock. Then when you get to the top, you can jump off and the parachute slowly drifts you down. The Yosemite National Park banned dangerous base jumping because of tragic deaths. Stephen Hawking still did what he wanted and he followed his own rules, his own boundaries. He kept on base jumping, and when he landed, the Yosemite Patrol or police would attempt to come after him, but they never got him. However, he and his good friend, a fellow climber, both died May 16, 2015 in a base jumping accident. He got too close to the rock wall and fell. But he will always be remembered for his courage. Dean Potter once said, "It's one of the most fundamental desires of man, of being free and flying unhindered," and it really seems to go a lot with our founding fathers' principle of freedom. I believe that people are able to stand up for whatever they feel is right. This can mean crashing through boundaries of injustice. There are so many things damaging this world, and no matter who is trying to stop you, you should always stand up for your rights or the rights of others. Boundaries and rules do block people a lot from doing both noble and sometimes terrible things. There are so many people in the world who have broken boundaries for the good. MLK, Rosa Parks, Malala, and more. And not only do these people have confidence, but optimism. Though, on the other hand, when I imagine a world with literally no laws or jails, I realize that really would be crazy. I feel that this was a very hard topic to speak about, but I just really needed to dig deep down and discover this world without boundaries.
Thank you, Claire. Bo.
Imagine a world without boundaries. When I think of boundaries, I think of getting better and going past your expectations. I think in a world without boundaries, there probably wouldn't be any rules. You could do whatever you want. No adults to boss you around like they tend to do sometimes. But that would probably mean a higher chance of getting hurt. People who are already very physical could probably seriously hurt you, especially if they're a little loopy in the head, if you know what I mean. What I'm trying to say is boundaries keep you safe. Not all do, and not all boundaries are good, but in my opinion, most are. There would probably be a lot of cheating in a world without boundaries. I bet in any sport with a baseline, you could just go completely out of bounds and not be down or out or anything. You could totally cheat and get away with it. I mean, even in a world with boundaries, people cheat. There's a golfer named Patrick Reed. He played golf at UGA, but stole a putter and also did a lot of other bad stuff. So they kicked him out of school. Well, he went pro, and he doesn't exactly have the best reputation. And in this year's Hero World Challenge, he got caught cheating by fellow golfer Brooks Koepka. Patrick Reed hit it in the sand and was so mad he started to brush the sand behind the ball to make a better lie for himself. A lie in golf is where the ball is on the ground. Back to Patrick Reed. So he received a 2-stroke penalty and a 1-month suspension. After the challenge. My dad would cheer for any UGA player, and pretty much any sport except for Patrick Reed. That's why you shouldn't be a cheater. People won't respect you. Cheating will take away the integrity of the game. And when a sport, especially golf, a gentleman's game, lacks integrity, it's just not the same. Wait, would sports even be a thing at all? I don't think a world without sports is a world I wouldn't want to live in, and I'm sure you wouldn't either, because golf isn't just to play, it's to entertain. Cheating would make every sport, well, not fun, and nobody would want to play. I mean, isn't sports about following the rules, getting on exercise, doing your best, and having fun from that? Some good things could come out of a world without boundaries. Michael Jordan once said, "Never say never because limits, like fears, are often just an illusion." To me, I think he means that you get better and always push through the boundaries that try and hold you back, but those boundaries can't hold you back forever. I think he means that fears are the personal boundaries that we create. To get past those boundaries, you need to work hard and be optimistic. That is why I chose that quote, why I admire Michael Jordan so much. And not just Michael either. Any other athlete that had to have a good mindset and had to work hard to get where they are today. There wouldn't be racism or people being sexist because there wouldn't be boundaries to say you can't do this, but you can do that. But then again, there are the bad things. Robberies would probably get a lot more common. The number of robbers could go up drastically because laws are boundaries, so there wouldn't be laws, which means there wouldn't be jails. Banks, people, businesses could lose a lot of money. It would be like the Great Depression all over again, except, it would happen in a completely different way and all the robbers would be super rich. I personally don't want to live in a world without boundaries. I like our world just the way it is. I mean, yeah, it's not perfect, but I like it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bo. Fourth graders, you've got about 10 minutes until recess, so if you want to stay for the next speech, you may, and if you'd like to leave now, you may do that, either way. I think you can get one more speech in if you'd like. Mary.
Imagine a world without boundaries. People, places, and cultures can change without our reality. A world without boundaries means a world with more crime and a world with more equality. A world with boundaries means fewer dangers and us communicating with others. There's no possible way to have a good foundation of a community with or without boundaries. And that reality is what people are confused with. Boundaries can be limits, barriers, walls, rules, or protections. It all comes down to what the intention behind the boundary is. Is the boundary meant to keep you safe and focused on what you need to do with your life? Or is the boundary building a wall, keeping you from others and from reaching your full potential? Even with my somewhat short life experience, I've learned enough to know that I sometimes put limits on myself. That doesn't seem to fit well with reaching my full potential. I do realize that sometimes these limits can be helpful. For example, when I run a 5K, before I even run, I know I'll get too tired if I speed at the beginning. I have to pace myself. While running, I have to constantly ask myself, should I keep a steady pace the whole time or switch between speeds? Go a little faster, sprint, and then slow down? I'm always pondering my next move and making sure I'll achieve a time that shows I pushed myself enough, but not too much. The same is true for life. Sometimes boundaries hold me back, or imaginary boundaries might keep me from reaching out to someone who has a different culture than I do. In that case, I have to break the boundaries, reach out a hand, and accept others. I've made a good friend this year who has a very different religion than I do and comes from a completely different culture. We've broken the barrier of our differences and become friends. Our friendship is an example of a social boundary being broken. Sometimes, like in a race, I have to be smart about knowing limits and when boundaries exist to keep me or others safe. Not to impose walls to block personal expression. Just like my 3-year-old brother isn't allowed in the front yard without me or a parent, that boundary keeps him safe. When I imagine a world without boundaries, a world where you can go and do whatever you want, it sounds wonderful at first. I want to build bridges, not walls between cultures and communities. One of the world's greatest scientists, Isaac Newton, once said, "We build too many walls and not enough bridges." I agree fully with his opinion. When I think of a world without boundaries, it seems wonderful because we want to be connected. But then again, I think of my little brother and what would happen if we just let him run out into the street. That wouldn't be safe. And what if I ran so fast at the start of my 5K that I had nothing left to give when the finish line was in sight? We have to be careful about the kinds of boundaries we set on ourselves. Boundaries can be both the world's enemy and friend. A world without boundaries could have unintended consequences, so I'm not sure I want to create a world without any. However, I do want to build a world with the right kind of boundaries. Just like I imagine myself running a 5K with a smart race strategy. Maybe even breaking the boundary of my last personal record, also known as PRs. My mom is a runner, so she taught me a lot about pacing and PRs. I want to break the boundaries that divide people. And I'm so optimistic that together we can break the boundaries that divide people. Those boundaries make people feel like they're so different, and really we are so much alike. We all want to receive love and to give love. The speed limit on the road is necessary, and so are just laws. Let's be careful to not create boundaries that keep us from sharing and uniting with others. I hope that whenever I run, I'll have fun and be successful. But more than that, I hope I can live a life where I feel free to be kind to everyone I encounter. Together, let's break those kinds of boundaries and to create a better world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Fourth graders, at this time, you can join your homeroom teachers in class so that you'll be able to go to recess and lunch. And thank you again for participating. Jack.
Imagine a world without boundaries, but I'm asking you in the audience to really imagine a world without boundaries. To me, imagining a world without boundaries means going out of your comfort zone, like pushing yourself. For example, there were some times when I went skiing that I found myself skiing at the ski borders. Now, some people don't care about the boundaries and want to test their tree skiing near the barriers or forests. I'm just like those people. I imagined what it would be like to go beyond the boundaries, to push myself. I found myself weaving in and out between trees, feeling the pressure on my face. It was thrilling. There are boundaries to keep us safe, like laws or rules. Laws are a really important part of our world. We couldn't survive without them. Also, in the world we live in, there has to be physical boundaries like controlling problems worldwide. For instance, the coronavirus. They don't want it to spread to other countries because it is very deadly. Where the people think the epicenter is, which is a market, they put barriers around that market because that is where it was found.
The people want it only to stay in the boundaries of the area so it doesn't spread to the rest of the world and so more people don't accidentally go into the area of that market. If we didn't have boundaries in our world, Earth would be extremely chaotic. On the other hand, one person that I admire in life was Stephen Hawking. When Stephen Hawking was 21 years old, he was diagnosed with ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. You're probably just like me, you have no idea what that means. Okay, back to the point. Stephen Hawking didn't stop. He didn't let that overwhelming physical boundary stop him. He pushed through it and became one of the smartest physicists in the world. He defied lots of odds because he survived 55 years with ALS. He must have definitely dreamed of what it would be like to be without boundaries. He was definitely confident. Stephen Hawking is one of the many people who are optimistic. I think you should have optimism too. Another person I admire is Lou Gehrig, who showed up to 2,130 MLB games in a row. Apart from just being there, he played almost every game. What was so devastating to him was that he knew he was dying, like literally, he was dying as he was living. But those overwhelming facts didn't stop him. He was optimistic, and being optimistic is a powerful thing. He tried and tried, but sadly, at the age of 39, his disease overtook him. He tried, ALS is Lou Gehrig's disease if you didn't know. It affects nerve cells in the brain and in the spinal cord too. He has been named the Iron Horse because he didn't give up and his record of 2,130 games. He stayed strong for as long as he could. His legacy will always be remembered. Lou Gehrig was optimistic. Take a moment and feel what he felt. He had a world record and wanted to continue his record, but every single second that he lived, he knew he could die right then and there. That's just hard to think about. If you think about your own life without boundaries, just like Stephen Hawking and Lou Gehrig did, and you make an effort to overcome the problems you may have, you'll have a better chance of overcoming them because you're optimistic. Being optimistic is a very good thing. I hope you challenge your challenges and overcome them. Don't let your optimism know any boundaries. Stay optimistic.
Thank you, Jack. Sam.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here and taking time out of your probably busy day to listen to my speech. Let me share it with you. Imagine a world without boundaries. Imagining a world without boundaries is implying that anything is possible because there's literally nothing that you cannot do. There are many types of boundaries, including any type of limit, like mental or physical limits, but keep in mind that we have broken some boundaries that seemed impossible before. For instance, we have successfully transported 12 people to the moon and back. The amount of technology that it takes to get out of the Earth's atmosphere is immense and very complex. And that's not even landing on the moon, walking on it, and then sending them all back alive. And to this day, we're still sending people in giant space stations into space for experiments to further deepen our understanding of space, which I am fascinated by. And it's not just people who walked on the moon. All of the NASA engineers calculated everything, but there is one that I want to focus on that broke and helped break some really quite huge boundaries. Her name is Katherine Johnson, and she's still alive at the age of 101. Born in 1918, she faced some boundaries including slavery and segregation. But still, she fulfilled her dreams of becoming a really accomplished NASA engineer. She pushed forward through everything, and I strive to be like her. She was optimistic, and when she was faced with boundaries, she overcame them with a smile on her face and an uplifting attitude. But of course, there are boundaries that are not physically possible, ever. Well, they are the type of boundaries that most everyone likes to call impossible. You can just not do it. It is undoable, plain and simple. Unless there were zero rules, laws, and boundaries, like this world that people imagine. I don't know about you, but when I think of a world with no boundaries, I think of complete and utter chaos. I think of a world with no rules, no laws, nothing to break and get in trouble for. But imagine that. It could be cool. I could make my own planet and have unlimited donuts, And there was no limit to human body, so I could be a giant 30-foot frog person basking on a warm rock on a Sunday afternoon, watching YouTube and drinking a slushie. But if there was a world with no boundary, there would be some major problems. Okay, well maybe that imaginative thing was a little weird. Another boundary that I normally think of are social boundaries, like taking something too far, like a way too personal joke. You can do that, but everyone just looks down on it. And it's not really a rule, everyone just silently agrees that it's not mean. Another example of a social boundary is not to burp in front of someone, because, well, it's kind of obvious. It's what we humans call rude, which is normally not socially acceptable, at least in my opinion. Boundaries, the sort of impassable imaginary wall that mostly keeps you from doing anything around impossible. Except the human race, as smart as we are, can break some of those boundaries in a good way, sometimes in not. But imagine what other boundaries we could break if we all come together and focus on one cause, one boundary held against us that hurts our species as a whole. Thank you for listening to my speech. I appreciate your time. Goodbye.
Thank you, Sam. Charlotte.
Imagine a world without boundaries. I want everyone in this room to close your eyes and imagine a world with no boundaries. A world with no limits, and a world with no go guardian. If you're a kid, you would probably think it'd be awesome because adults can't tell you what to do and how to do it. You'd probably have a lot of free time. Actually, a world without boundaries would probably be miserable. Kids and adults would do unsafe things because there aren't any rules and people to tell you what to do. Now, according to learnersdictionary.com, boundaries means unofficial rules about what should not be done and limits that define acceptable behavior. Think about it like this. If there were no boundaries and we had a president, then that president could do whatever they wanted to do to the country, and then the United States could turn out like the Hunger Games or something. And we don't want that to happen, do we? If there were no rules, the whole world could fall apart in just a couple minutes. Without rules, kids could spend way too much time on social media and eating junk food that they could get sick or think negatively toward themselves. People could cyberbully people without getting mad at them for doing it. If there were no boundaries, I'd probably run away and live in Target. Sorry, Ryan. When I was a little girl, I remember going to a really fun water trail. During the middle of the hike, a storm came. Right when the storm started, I noticed these big rocks, and I started jumping on them. My mom got mad at me and told me to get off. I didn't want to, but I got off anyway. About 5 seconds later, this huge wave, about 3 times the size of me, came out of nowhere and went right over the rocks I was just jumping on. If there were no boundaries back then my parents probably wouldn't have told me to get off, and that wave would have carried me away, and who knows what could have happened. Imagine if you got hurt really badly, but at the time there were no boundaries in the world, and all the doctors and medical people were not doing their jobs, and they were just hanging out with their friends and having fun. Then there would be nobody to help you, and you'd probably get very hurt. Well, there are some good things that can come from a world without boundaries. For example, there wouldn't be any go guardian. Well, that's only good for kids, but that doesn't matter. Okay, back to the reasons why it's bad. If there were no boundaries, then the annoying people in your class would probably just keep annoying you and wouldn't stop. Oh, and the people who are always getting on your nerves wouldn't stop either. One of the most horrible things that could happen if there were no boundaries is almost all kids wouldn't go to school and get an education. They would probably be at home on their phones or on their TV watching junk that won't do you any good. In fact, I've made some boundaries myself. The boundaries I've made are personal boundaries to keep me safe. And if there are no boundaries, then those boundaries I've set for myself are probably broken, and I might get hurt, aggravated, or worse. Boundaries are the things that keeps the world standing and safe. Without them, everything would fall apart. Thanks for listening to me.
Thank you, Charlotte. And let's give our 5th graders a big And so we'll do as we did with our 4th graders, we like to get out some certificates. I have a few comments on the 5th graders' content. And then get some photos before our judges retire to the judging room. So we had an amazing amount of diverse topics discussed with our fourth graders and also, of course, with our fifth graders. With our fifth graders, we heard about boundaries and rules being particularly important in the world of sports, and hearing about some rather well-known and egregious examples of breaking those boundaries and rules in sports. And as Jimmy said, who would really want to even live in a world like that, where your character wasn't reliable and wasn't your word? We heard about a world without boundaries can be scary. However, we also heard a reminder we can always use, adults, and it comes from our children often, of Anne Frank, who had the most incredible boundaries to face during World War II and the Holocaust, and faced it with a positive attitude and let no personal boundaries get in her way of becoming one of the world's greatest and best known authors. We've heard about that a world of self-confidence could exist because sometimes boundaries hold us back. I love this phrase, Sophia, make your life a masterpiece. We also had a reminder of parts of the world where girls still have limited opportunities because of the boundaries that hold them back. Lucas reminded us that boundaries can be also interpreted as barriers, and that Jackie Robinson was one inspiring example of a person who broke through those barriers. He reminds us, Lucas does, that imagination and courage takes to break boundaries, and that even at 6 years old, little Ruby Bridges could exist as a boundary breaker. And then he brought us right up until today with Greta Thunberg, who has autism, but who broke boundaries of all kinds, personal, social, political, and I just love the way Lucas reminded us that you're never too young or too small to make a difference. Kai helped us imagine being able to move freely from country to country. He reminds us that things like dyslexia would not be a boundary if we could break through those. Ask really the right question, what is that right balance in setting boundaries and breaking boundaries? And I love the reminder, and of course fifth grade studies this, when America welcomed immigrants with open arms, and Kai reminded us that not only did it mean better lives for them and their families, but a better, stronger America. Hanya really challenged us to think about what boundaries mean to you personally, and it might be something that we haven't given much thought to, but obviously these students have. And that, again, there's pros and cons. Some exist to keep us safe and secure, but some hold people back. And they hold them back from things like generosity and ending poverty in our world. She reminds us, however, boundaries can be part of having self-respect. Claire used an example, another person did as well, of Stephen Hawking, who overcame such unimaginable boundaries. Without boundaries, Claire challenges us to remember people could truly love each other. But if there were no boundaries, our fifth graders are very philosophical and practical. They look at both sides, that chaos could reign. And she asked, really, I think, the fundamental question, what do people choose to do with their free will? It's up to us. Bo says that if you are breaking barriers to him or boundaries, it means you go beyond expectations. And even with boundaries, we have cheating. People will not respect you. He had a wonderful quote from Michael Jordan, but then I like the way Bo interpreted it, that it meant pushing through fears. and that's the personal boundary we often create for ourselves, is fear. And he says he kind of likes the world just the way it is. I'm glad about that, Bo. Mary, I'm also very philosophical and thoughtful. It all comes down to what the intention of the boundary is. That imaginary boundaries hold us back from reaching out to others and making friendships. She reminds us that in a lot of ways we set our own boundaries and that we need to break through those boundaries that divide people. Jack reminds us that breaking boundaries means that you have to be willing to go outside your comfort zone, but yet laws and boundaries are necessary. Coming to a very topical and important topic, the coronavirus, how to contain that. Again, he also, like Claire, talked about the inspirational Stephen Hawking, and he brought optimism into that thought that Stephen Hawking and Lou Gehrig were so optimistic in the face of really insurmountable boundaries, but that they didn't let their optimism know any boundaries. Sam reminds us that humans can break boundaries for good or for bad, that we have successfully broken some really important boundaries of space and talked about moon missions. But he also reminds us of the engineers, not just the famous astronauts, who made that possible. People like African American Katherine Johnson, a woman who was held back so much and yet was one of the quintessential reasons that the space missions were possible and successful. I like his imaginary world of no boundaries for himself, making his own planet and eating all the donuts that he wants. But then he did come right back to Earth again from that imaginary planet, and he did acknowledge that, at least in 5th grade and in 5th grade classrooms, we do need some social boundaries. And then Charlotte reminds us of all the freedom kids could have, especially no-go guardian spying on their internet use. And that I really liked Charlotte discussing that a president without boundaries, we could end up kind of like in the Hunger Games. She might need to do some public service announcements here before the coming election. With no boundaries, there'd be more annoyances, maybe another reference to social boundaries in 5th grade. But I just think they were very thoughtful and very honest and very open. And we'd like to once again congratulate our 5th grade speakers. If you'll come up and get your certificates, and again, stay for pictures, please.